Yeah, that. Start, yeah.
All right. Good to see you back. Well, hey, it is a pleasure indeed to be here with my commission colleagues on this first meeting for September, and with City Attorney Leal and Manager Ritzma. Happy to be starting out this, what doesn't quite feel like fall yet, but this fall season here in Kalamazoo. So to get ourselves officially started, I'm going to call this City Commission business meeting to order for Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. And our first order of business is roll call. Clerk Borling.
Commissioner Decker. Present. Commissioner Hess.
Present.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Present.
Commissioner Juarez. Commissioner Pradel.
Present.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. May I have a motion to excuse Commissioner Juarez from the meeting this evening?
So moved. Support.
Motion made by Commissioner Hoffman, supported by Commissioner Hess. All in favor, please say. Decker. Sorry. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay? All right, motion passes. We are honored this evening to have Reverend David Zomer here from Bethany Reformed Church to get us started this evening, and I'm going to ask everyone to please stand for the invocation and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. As we gather together in these last hot days of summer and look forward to a cool and refreshing fall, we recognize that there is a higher existence than us and our limited wisdom. And we ask that you bless the City Council tonight as each person works for justice and liberty and fairness here in Kalamazoo. We thank you for their ability to serve the people. We ask that your presence be here tonight and bless each one. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
I'd like to thank everybody that is joining us here in the chambers this evening. We don't have any proclamations, which is almost unusual this evening. I think we've been pretty much batting 1,000 on those. So we are now down to adoption of the formal agenda. Commissioners, is there any item that's on the consent agenda that you would like to have moved to the regular agenda? See none. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to move, and bless you, move an item from G, the consent agenda, to the regular agenda? See no one. The agenda stands as is. Manager Ritzma.
Thank you, Mayor. For communications this evening, we have members from the United Way here to give a presentation on the Alice report. And I'd like to introduce our Community Planning Economic Development Director, Antonio Mitchell, who will introduce our United Way guests. Antonio? All right. Antonio is not here. Okay, yeah, he's got a bad foot. So I'll go ahead and introduce Alyssa Stewart, who is the Chief Impact Officer at the United Way of South Central Michigan, who will give the presentation. Alyssa?
Welcome, Ms. Stewart. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me. My colleague Lionel will not be joining me today. He's traveling for the holiday. So happy to be here in front of you all to share a bit about the 2023 Alice report. I'll move through this quickly. I want to make sure to leave some time for questions or any discussion that you all might like to have. But I'll start with who we are. We like to take every opportunity to remind folks who we are at the United Way, mostly because we have a new name. We are now the United Way of South Central Michigan. We merged last year. We were formerly United Way of Battle Creek and Kalamazoo region. We now serve a 6-county area, but are still here locally in Kalamazoo, serving the city, the county at large. And you can see here on screen our vision, our mission, and our path in doing the work that we do as a United Way. And you'll see in our path specifically that we reference ALICE households, which speaks to the why of why we are utilizing this data and why we are out and about in community sharing with folks like you all, decision makers, policy makers, people working within systems that impact households, that we are sharing this data to make sure that folks have it and are equipped with it as you all make the important decisions and do the important work that you all do. So ALICE is an acronym. It stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. And it is a specific population of people in our community. They're hardworking households, often working 1, 2, even 3 jobs in some cases, whose earnings can't keep up with the rising costs of necessities, of the very basic items that it takes to survive in our world. ALICE is above the federal poverty line, but below the ALICE survival budget for their household. One of the great things about the report, it's a statewide report, but it gives county by county data, and we'll even look at some of the high-level sub-county data today to really zero in on the city of Kalamazoo. We love the data, but it's important as we look at charts and numbers to ground ourselves in the fact that ALICE are real people, that ALICE is in every room we are in every organization, every business. There are people who may not know that they're ALICE, but the data would tell us are living below that ALICE threshold. And ALICE is essential. ALICE workers are, as I said, in every sector and playing really critical roles, in many cases jobs that they were highly trained to do. We know that ALICE has PhDs, master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, associate's degrees, and are often doing, again, very critical, essential jobs. So it's important to remember as we look at the data, there is sort of, there's no us and them when it comes to ALICE. ALICE is all of us. And what benefits ALICE benefits us all. So the heartbeat of the ALICE report is the survival budget, which you'll see on the slide on the screen. As I mentioned, the report gives us county-specific data based on the actual cost of living in Kalamazoo County. It's important to note that this 2023 report uses 2021 data. Because of the methodology, the data sources, there's a slight delay, but it is exciting that this 2023 report gives us data that includes 2020 and 2021, so the onset and height of the pandemic. So this does start to tell the story of how COVID impacted folks here in Kalamazoo County. Now, as a reminder, the title of this is Survival Budget, and it truly means that, because as you look at the survival budget, you'll see how conservative these numbers are, okay? So on the left hand, just to orient folks, on the left hand are the sort of budget line items that we all may be familiar with as we think about even our own household budgets, things like housing, rent, utilities, childcare, food, transportation. And then as you work your way down, the bottom 3 rows are actually the revenue side of the equation. So there's the monthly total of the expenses, the annualized total of the expenses, and then the hourly wage it would take worked full-time to balance that budget, okay? And then another great thing about the report is that it actually allows for different household types, right? It doesn't average or kind of lump everyone together, right? It acknowledges that there are all different types of households in our community. This is just a snapshot of some of them. So I'll actually draw attention over to the 2 adults, 2 in childcare column, which is second or third from the right, if you will. That's the highest that's reflected here on this survival budget. And you'll see that it shows that childcare, unsurprisingly, for households that have 2 kids in childcare, is the biggest expense for this household. And then a lot of other costs are also very expensive. Food, for example, well over $1,000. One thing that we always get as a reaction to this is that rent is way too low. I don't know if anyone knows anyone in the city, 4 people family, that has rent as low as $675, right? So again, this is based on affordable housing data. This is what would be affordable housing for a family of this income level. And we know, we have many experts on the dais today that would tell us that it is becoming increasingly hard to actually find affordable housing in our community. So that's important to note, right? So with that in mind, this is a very low, bare bones budget. And yet, in that 2 adult, 2 in childcare household, it would take $31.45 an hour worked full-time. Now that's cumulative, so that could be one of those adults working and earning above that wage, or both adults together earning over that wage could get them over the survival budget threshold. So this framework of this Kalamazoo County specific budget is what then drives the data we're going to look at on the following slides. So the folks we see identified as Alice in the following slides are folks who are not making that wage for their household configuration. They are below this threshold. So we have some trend data. We've been doing the Alice report in partnership with the Michigan Association of United Ways. We've been doing it for many years. So we now have some great trend data, and you can see that on this page. You can see in dark blue is poverty, and that medium blue is that distinct Alice population. And you can see how this has trended over time. Interestingly, I'll just say this, editorializing a little bit, but it's really interesting about Kalamazoo. Kalamazoo has very erratic data in a lot of spaces. Infant mortality, for example, is another space where we see really big fluctuations year over year in Kalamazoo. So you'll see kind of some of that same up and down for us in this economic space. And you can see that the most recent data points, which are on the far right, that look at the trend lines between 2019, which is our last batch of data, and this data in 2021, both Alice and poverty, unfortunately, were trending up for Kalamazoo County. You can see over on the right, that 10% increase speaks to, between 2019 and 2021, the difference between those 2 years, the increase between those. So we are seeing a significant uptick between 2019 and 2021 in Alice households. Just at a very high level, what the report tells us about wages. So 35.5% of the labor force, age 16 and up, in Kalamazoo County are hourly workers. Only 26.6 are salaried, and that's both full and part-time for both of those categories. That matters because we know that salaried workers have more stability and more predictability in their wages. They're also more likely to have access to benefits, to paid time off, to other things that can help provide them with resilience against unexpected expenses or changes in their lives. And only 70% of the top 20 jobs in Michigan 70% of the top 20 jobs in Michigan as of 2021 still paid less than $20 an hour, which, based on the data we just saw, it would take around $20 an hour, if not more, worked by 1 or 2 people in a household to balance most households' budgets. So this is a very complicated slide, and it's very small for people on the screen. So I'll simplify the takeaways from this important slide, which is really intended to speak to the impact of pandemic supports, because that is a huge piece of people's financial situation as we think about 2020 and 2021. So at a very high level, I'll try to sort of synthesize this. This slide creates a proxy family of 4, and these are family of 4 with 2 parents doing the most common jobs in Michigan, which is retail sales and cashier. So you can think of this family, right? There's many of them in our community as we went into the pandemic. The middle column, so kind of ignore the blue column for now, the column beyond the blue column shows that family's financial situation if they'd been working full-time in 2021. So you can see their wages in that kind of gold and light gold. And then you can see stacked on top of their earned wages, the pandemic supports they might have been eligible for. So things like child dependent care credit, economic impact payments, child tax credit. And when you see all those stacked up, it actually gets them to the survival budget for their household. So those things filled a really important gap. If you look to the column to the right, you'll see that same 2 workers, if their hours were cut, right, which many retail workers' hours were cut, right, or significantly impacted during the pandemic. So if those folks were part-time or went down to part-time, you can see how much smaller their wages are. And then you can see that green stack on top of all of the pandemic supports they were eligible for. So some of those same ones that they were when working full-time, but also earned income tax credit, expanded SNAP benefits, emergency rental assistance, all of those things stacked up. So you can see it more than doubled their actual income that they had to work with. So the intent of this slide is really just to show what gap the multiple state and federal supports, and even local supports here in Kalamazoo, filled for households during the pandemic. Just over on the right, just for reference, that little dashed kind of black and white line, that's the federal poverty line. So that's just there for context, right? To show that, for example, those part-time retail workers, if they had not received that stack of benefits, they would have fallen below the federal poverty line. In real terms, we are hearing from our nonprofit partners about the impact of these benefits being rolled back and scaled back or ended altogether. One example we heard from our colleagues at Portage Community Center were that they had a family that they were providing with assistance. During the pandemic, they received expanded SNAP benefits, $500 a month. They got notification. The next month, it was cut back to $50 a month. So, you know, a common story, one that I'm sure is happening to lots of folks, but just to think about going 1 month having $500 of assistance for healthy, nutritious food for your family, the next month, you have to find an additional $450 somewhere in your budget to try to fill that gap. Really important, I'll be quick through these, but it's extremely important. We always, when we share ALICE data, want to drill down to demographics because there are significant disparities in this data in Kalamazoo and in every county across the state of Michigan. These are the 3 household types in Kalamazoo County that are the most likely to be living below the ALICE threshold. Single female-headed households with children, 80% in Kalamazoo County are living below the ALICE threshold. That includes both ALICE and poverty. Households headed by individuals under 25, so our younger households, recent college graduates, younger households are also, 78% of them are living below the ALICE threshold. And single male-headed households with children, 59%. And coming in fourth, just below, is senior households, age 65 and up, but these are the top 3. Then we layer race and ethnicity, right? Because there's intersections between household type and race and ethnicity. Just taken visually, this graph is intended to show visually the disparities. So if you look at each of these columns as a different race and ethnicity, this uses census data, which is why these categories are used. We have from left to right, Asian, Black, Hispanic, American Indian, Alaskan Native, white, multiracial, and then you can just sort of see the total households. So you can see that dark blue is poverty, that medium blue is ALICE, and then that gold color is above the ALICE threshold. So making more than that wage that we saw in the household survival budget for their household type. You just take each block at a time, you can really see the disparities. So you can see in poverty, our multiracial, our Black households are experiencing significant disparities in that space. When you add on ALICE, it's even compounded, right? So if you take poverty and ALICE for our Black households, that's 67%. So 67% of households that identify as Black are living below the ALICE threshold. 50% of our Hispanic households in Kalamazoo County are living below the ALICE threshold, and that's compared to 34% for white households. I mentioned intersectionality, but that's important to think about. This graph doesn't do that in itself, but just to think about the household types, you know, and then how that intersects with race, we can see that there are significant disparities in people's economic mobility and their economic situation. It is important to note with disparities of this scale, and that we've seen this consistently over all of the ALICE reports, I think it's important to always say, these statistics are not a reflection of individual failures. Outcomes of this scale point to systemic, entrenched, generational challenges. And I know that's something that this commission talks about quite a bit, but I want to name that I would hate for anyone to look at this data and walk away with it reinforcing any potentially harmful stereotype. This is about systems that are creating the outcomes that they've been designed to create. Our housing systems, healthcare, education, all of those things come together to create this outcome and this disparity based on race. I want to drill down into the Kalamazoo City data. So this is high level, but wanted to make sure you all had line of sight to this because of your specific focus on the city. So you can see this shows us the trends over time. So you can see on the box for Kalamazoo City, 2012 data, 2015, 2017, 2019, and this most recent 2021 data. You can just sort of read across and see how the total number of households and then the percentage of those households that are living below the ALICE threshold, so both poverty and ALICE, how that's changed and ebbed and flowed over time. So the city has been higher than the county at large for quite some time, but you can see that it has had some spikes and some ups and downs. But in 2019, things were trending in the right direction, down to 53%, but they have been bumped back up to 56% across 2020 and 2021. So a couple quick warning signs on the road ahead. As I mentioned, pandemic supports were really impactful, but they've largely rolled back, right? We still have ARPA dollars on the ground here locally, which is amazing, and other things at play, but important to realize that those federal and state benefits have largely gone away, which is creating real gaps for households. In 2021, 55% of households below the ALICE threshold had no emergency savings, and 62% had no retirement assets. So that asset-limited part of ALICE is really important because assets are the key to generational wealth. They're the key to resilience from all of the economic things that are going on. And so it's really important that we notice that disparity and recognize that those households are really not able to build savings and wealth. And we all know inflation has increased so significantly and it continues to increase so significantly. So that's creating even more of a pinch now in real time for our ALICE households. So it's easy to look at that data and feel a bit disheartened, but I think it's important to remember all of the amazing work that is happening and all of the supports that we are very fortunate to have in Kalamazoo County as we think about how we support those experiencing poverty and those in this ALICE population. So we have on the screen a few of the strategies that United Way is doing in partnership with many people in the community, but I just want to lift up a few that are supported by the city because that's important to lift up. One is our small business work, supported by the city, by FFE, is hugely connected to our ALICE work. We know that often folks are starting their own businesses, doing those things as a way to generate additional income for themselves and to take more control over their earnings and their financial future. So the small business loans and grants that we are able to do at United Way in partnership with the city are directly impacting hundreds of ALICE households every year. Another that I just wanted to name is that we currently receive funding from the city through Share Prosperity Kalamazoo for our VITA program, our Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, which provides free high-quality tax preparation to ALICE households, to households earning below $57,000 a year. We provide hundreds of tax returns each year that bring back millions of dollars in people's pockets in tax refunds. So just wanted to, again, commend the city for support of that project and lift that up as some of the action that is being taken to really continue to wrap around ALICE households in our community. So this was a very short, may have not felt short, but it was a shortened presentation, so happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Commissioners, questions on this report? Vice Mayor Cooney?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Alyssa. That was great. Really appreciate all the work you're doing that. And I'm so glad that we were able to give you a platform to talk to the city, to talk to everybody so everybody knows what's happening here. I have several questions. I want to start with that slide on financial hardship is not equally distributed. Are those statistics for the county or the city?
Those are county-wide.
So those are the county. And we know that if we look at the city, even looking at this, 80% of single female-headed households in the county. So it must be close to 100% in the city.
It is probably slightly higher, so you're correct, it's probably significant. I mean, 80% is significant, to be clear, but it probably is even slightly higher in the city, you're correct.
Right. Okay. The other thing that strikes me a lot is you emphasized it, I just want to, we're talking about survival. We're not talking about thriving. Commissioner Juarez always talks about not surviving, but thriving. Yeah. And we're not even talking about that. Yeah. We're just talking about survival. And this is too low even for survival. Yeah. Another thing that strikes me is that the statistics for 2012 are the same statistics for 2021. So we're not doing better. We're just doing the same, just where we were. We did better for a while, but we're just where we are. The other point that you made, I think, is really important, that these are not last year 2022 statistics. These were statistics when the federal government was giving special aid in so many different ways. People weren't allowed to be thrown out of their apartments. Mothers got an allowance for their kids, and we were still in this kind of a situation. So, okay, one thing I wanted to ask you was, have you identified some cities that are doing something about this?
Vice Mayor, I'm sorry, have we identified?
Any cities that have tried to respond to try
Sure.
to do something about this?
Yeah, so I mean, I think many cities are, right? Many cities took their ARPA funding and really tried to target it and focus it on the folks most impacted by the impacts of COVID, which across the country our BIPOC communities were disproportionately impacted, and in many cases our urban centers were disproportionately impacted by COVID. Some of the ways that folks have, some examples, and I know Vice Mayor Cooney and I have talked about this a lot in our work. I sit on the Shared Prosperity Kalamazoo organizing committee as well, in transparency, and we talk quite a bit about this there. I would say asset building and income building programs are where we are seeing momentum in this space. What I mean by that is programs like child savings accounts that allow families to begin building assets and to really realize the benefits that many of us are privileged to have of compounding interest, giving that time to build and grow. So child savings accounts, which help build assets, other savings accounts, educational savings accounts, even for adults, are another piece of that. And we're also seeing an increase in guaranteed basic income programs as one tool in the toolkit for many cities. We actually just talked with Ann Arbor today, who is launched today a guaranteed basic income pilot in partnership with U of M, the city, and several other partners using ARPA funding. And they launched that today. They'll be selecting 100 people who will randomly selecting based on applications, 100 eligible people who will receive $548 a month for 24 months. And they'll be able to measure what those households are able to do, what kind of opportunities they will create. There's no requirements. They will receive the money, and we'll be able to see how they grow and how they flourish based on having access to resources.
That's great. And you told me once about a program called Up Together, where they look at 3 different pieces. One piece is this giving financial assistance to people, no questions asked. The second thing is having people tell their own stories to change the ideas about why people are in these conditions. And then thirdly, lobbying local, state, and federal government to try to put more programs in place to assist them. And they've had a lot of success. I was just looking at their website today, and in a lot of different places around the country, they really moved on that.
Yeah,
So I got a lot more, but I'll yield.
thank you.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. Christopher Pradel?
Thank you so much for your presentation, Elsa. A couple things. These are just items I just wanted to get your initial impressions on these as well. One of the things I see in my day job particularly is that the ALICE populations and those who are in the poverty level, unexpected expenses, especially large unexpected expenses, really snowball the situation or exacerbate this issue. And largely it could be a car repair that was unanticipated that causes transportation issues, or a major home repair that they weren't planning on. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, that asset limited piece is huge, right? The thing we didn't see on the survival budget was any money for savings, right? So one thing I wasn't able to talk about today, but happy to talk about offline with any of you, is the report also provides a stability budget. So we looked at the survival budget. It also provides a stability budget, which actually shows what wages would need to be paid to actually be able to build a savings, an emergency savings, a savings to be resilient to those types of things. And I'll just say for that family of 4 with 2 children in childcare, the annual income they would need is over $100,000 a year. So when you think about what the number was in the survival budget compared to what stability would look like, we also know there are a lot of people stuck in that gap where they're above ALICE but are still not at a place of stability. So absolutely, I even think households well above the ALICE and the household survival budget are in the situation that you're mentioning, Commissioner Pradel, where they if they were hit with that, needing a new furnace, needing a new, right, all the things that Community Homeworks does, a medical bill, having to pay their high deductible healthcare plan out of pocket, all of those things could be absolutely devastating and may cause them to have to incur credit card debt or go to predatory lending and end up, again, being caught in a cycle there where they're paying high interest to try to stay afloat.
No, it's really helpful. The three major things we hear from, number one thing we hear from families and homeowners of why they can't afford things is health-related expenses they weren't expecting. Second one is car, obviously home-related type things that happen as well. The thing that's particularly concerning is that when you have those unexpected expenses like you were describing, typically the tools that you would go to depend on in those emergency situations, many of the households don't have access to those tools, but those who did now are out of reach. So if you were depending on your credit card, it might be maxed out now, or the interest rates might make it so you couldn't afford to keep up with those payments. Home credit line of credit for your home and on your mortgage are out of reach because you have 8.25% interest rates for just taking out a home equity line.
Yeah.
And so that's concerning because when you have those catastrophic things that happen, you have nothing to rely on even though that would snowball you, even if you had it to rely on, you don't even have those tools available to you and your family. I don't know if it's maybe a canary in the coal mine example for us as a community, but two of the neighborhoods that we're particularly seeing a major uptick in calls from are Burke Acres and Millwood, which we would consider predominantly like working class Alice or higher households, which should concern us as a community because that means that those people are beginning to be more economically distressed than they were before.
I think a lot of people had to dip into their savings. If you think about this 2021 data between now and then, a lot of people, I think, who maybe even had savings prior have been having to dip into them as their work hours fluctuated, as they've been impacted by inflation, all of these things. So I do think we have probably a number of those Alice folks that you're talking about that have unfortunately been forced to sort of peel away at that.
Another thing that we didn't touch a ton on was that, education debt, that's about to start hitting people hard again. And so, not everyone has the luxury to get out of that debt load. And so, especially a lot of young families. I mean, when you talk to a lot of young families on the side of the soccer field, really what you hear is it's like mortgage, childcare, and education debt. And, really two of those things weren't really things people had to consider even 20 or 30 years ago in terms of like crippling costs for them in their household.
Yep. That is another piece, Commissioner Cradle, that often comes up as we're presenting Alice, is that the survival budget, there's not student loan debt. And the reality is so many of our households, especially those younger households, but really all households, because many people are helping their kids pay student loan debt or they're paying their own still, right? 30 years after their education is complete.
I'm 38 and I'm still paying for student loan debt, yeah. So,
Yep.
so I mean, it tells you, what opportunities could you have had, to invest in or save in if you weren't still paying those. Last thing I know, Vice Mayor Cooney, you talked about that Up Together program, which you were telling us about recently as well, but I was curious if you had heard about the RX Kids program that was recently launched in Flint.
No.
It was basically early child and maternal care type program that's very similar, but basically what they do is, I can't remember what phase of pregnancy, provide once a month guaranteed income payment, and then it rolls over, I believe, into the first year of the child's life. And so this is a new pilot that they're starting in Flint as well.
That's awesome. It seems too simple, but it is interesting, right, to think about the easiest way to help people have mobility is to just simply provide them with more resources, right? Then they can make the choices that are best for their families and grow from there.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Decker?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for coming today and presenting this. This is good information. When you have it all put together and condensed, you can really see what the numbers are. I do feel, that some of the things that the city and the county have kind of put into place and have been doing is kind of working towards that when you talk about trying to increase our residents' income. CPED has things that are going out there. You've got SPK, you've got the United Way grants, Black Wall Street, Beta, NACD, just to name a few other organizations that are out there really trying to assist our community. And I think it also kind of comes back to, I think I said this at the last commission meeting, is that we want all of the income, we want our residents' income to increase. And I think also it goes to the fact that, we have to think about, as a city and as a county, what kind of businesses are we attracting here to the city of Kalamazoo? What are we actively seeking out to come here that are going to bring those good paying jobs now that we're working on training our residents and giving them more skills? And I think that, now belonging to Southwest Michigan First, Discover Kalamazoo, the brownfield plans that we have into place, what we're really trying to do also is to make sure we create shovel-ready sites. So when Southwest Michigan First or some kind of business comes to us and says, hey, I want to bring in 50 jobs that pay $60,000 to $70,000, we've got the workforce that can do that, and they've got a shovel-ready site that's going to make it even that much lower on their end when it comes to cost, and also be able to, get a business up and running a lot quicker and to help our community. So I feel that we are doing a lot. We can always do more, but we can only do what we can do within our constraints. And I appreciate this information because, it's been a minute since I've looked at this particular stuff all close up. So I appreciate that. It really does open up, I think, a lot of individuals' eyes to, when you look at this number at the city of Kalamazoo and how it never went down, it just keeps going up. And when I compare it to the other townships or cities, there's kind of fluctuates, but ours has been a steady increase. And I think this commission and I think our community has kind of recognized that in some of the stuff that we've been putting into place to really bring our residents some relief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Hess.
Yes, in housing here and the action strategies, you talk about the continuum of care. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about other things that Continuum of Care are doing besides the rentable program?
Yeah, absolutely. So Continuum of Care is a HUD mandated program that exists in every community, or the balance of state is what it's called in some smaller communities. But it's basically the mechanism mandated by the federal government that we must have in place to help administer housing funds from HUD and MSHDA. And so a big part of what the Continuum of Care, which is housed at United Way and has been for the last couple of years, is working to administer those funds and get those resources out in accordance with HUD's requirements and their goals and priorities, but also taking into account our local context. And so right now we're in the process of administering emergency solutions grant dollars and Continuum of Care grant dollars. And so that's a big piece of what the COC does. But we do also, as you mentioned, have a rentable program, which is a direct assistance program for ALICE households. So for folks who aren't eligible for often some of the HUD and MSHDA resources, we offer up to $2,000 in one-time housing assistance to help them stay or get housed. But they have to have above 60% AMI, area median income earnings. So we know they can sustain that housing. They hit a bump and they need a little bit of help to get over that bump. So that's right now some of their main focus. Is that helpful?
Yep, very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Decker.
Thank you. I just had one question regarding the rentable program. I was doing some research on that, and do you know how close you are to getting that up and running? I know it said check back on September 17th for those funds.
Yeah, we have seen huge interest in that. Thank you for asking. So we launched back in April, and within the first 2 days, we had 800 applications for that assistance. Now, some of those folks weren't eligible. They didn't meet the eligibility criteria around income, or at that time it was City of Kalamazoo specific. They may have lived outside of the city limits. But we just have seen huge interest. So we were trying to go through all of those applications. So as of right now, our application is closed, but we are planning on starting that back up again in mid-September and being able to accept some additional applications. We're also aggressively seeking additional funding because we have, at up to $2,000 per household. We've been moving through our pot of money from the city very quickly, and we're seeking countywide funding so that we don't have to turn people away if they are outside of the city limits. Yeah, thank you.
Other questions, Commission? Thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening, and also I think over the course of time we've been doing so much work together, and I really appreciate that. We have another partnership item on our agenda tonight for work that we're doing together, so I really, really appreciate that effort. So thank you so much for being here. Now is the opportunity for public comments, and we'll start with people who are here in the chambers. Just a reminder that at the business meeting, you will have 3 minutes. If you'd like to provide some public comments, please state your name and whether you live in the city. And then just a reminder is that this is not an opportunity for a conversation. This is your time to present something of interest to you, to the City Commission. And after anyone in the chamber comes forward, we'll have an opportunity for people to call in with public comments. That number is 888-382-9556. And so if you want to call in, please write that number down, and probably now is a good time to call. Is there anyone in the chambers that wants to make a comment?
John Baker. I don't live in the city, but I just wondered who thought it was a good idea to put them bike lanes in downtown Kalamazoo. From what I understand, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think bikes pay any taxes like I do with my car or my motorcycle. How do they get their own special lane? And coming through downtown, that's ridiculous now. Too bad you guys did that. I wonder if some of the board members are the same ones that voted to let the homeless stay in our park. Look out your window right there and you'll see a group of them right now. As I'm coming in today, the back, I noticed this is all clean. There's no one hanging out there or anything. I asked the security guard outside, I said, why isn't there a mess out here and garbage wherever they go like they do? And he says, we don't allow it here. Well, why do you guys allow it right across the street? Well, I mean, we got them all over. I'd like the city to do something instead of yakking all the time. That'd be nice. And get rid of the bike lanes. That's ridiculous. I come down through town all the time at different hours. I never see. The other day I seen one bike, and that was a homeless gentleman. But I don't see a pack of bikes or anything using that at 5 o'clock, at 3 o'clock, at 9 in the morning, 8 in the morning. No bikes are using them lanes. It's just ridiculous. I don't know how you guys did that. And I'm sure it cost us taxpayers money to do that too, right? Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Gujan Caterino, a 26-year resident of the Edison neighborhood and a retired KPS teacher of 20 years. I've come here tonight to speak for the first time because I'm sad, frustrated, and a bit angry that I need to prepare myself for the 4th time to attend a funeral of one of my students who was shot and killed in the city of Kalamazoo. In a 5-day period recently, there were 2 shootings in my neighborhood, and a few days later, 2 teenagers were shot. And yet, with 4 acts of violence within a 5-day period, there was silence from city and community leaders. I'm quite sure no one condones this behavior in our community, yet the silence seems to suggest a vague tone of acceptance or inevitability. Many people affected by violence are the same people who may feel unseen, unheard, and undervalued in our community. And no public acknowledgement or denouncement of the violent act may help to reinforce those feelings that they don't matter. Cure Violence Global is a data-driven gun violence prevention program that is based on 5 key components. We do a good job with the first 2 of interrupting violence and offering support to the highest risk individuals. Some of my friends are the boots on the ground, street outreach workers, often putting themselves in harm's way at the scene of shootings, delivering custom notifications, and at the hospital after shootings to help prevent retaliation. But where I feel we need to step up is component number 3, change community norms that allow, encourage, and exacerbate violence in chronically violent neighborhoods to healthy norms that reject the use of violence. It encourages the community to, quote, host responses to every shooting where community members come together and express the rejection of violent behavior and norms, end quote. Our silence after every shooting is sending the wrong message. All of this violence in our city spreads waves of trauma to literally hundreds of people. There are people who can't sleep, can't eat, feel angry, isolated, sad, suffer from PTSD, take out aggression on others, and sometimes rely on unhealthy coping mechanisms to get by. We need to heal our community to help prevent further violence. In nearly all cases, a perpetrator of violence was first a victim. I hope with the new pot of money going toward gun violence that priority is given to culturally sensitive, trauma-informed mental health practitioners. Our community is hurting, and it's widespread. It's not just the immediate family that's affected, but friends, neighbors, classmates, and teachers.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the chambers who wants to speak this evening?
Good evening, everybody. Toby Hannah Davies, and I do live in the city. I was here at the last meeting because your last agenda was really rich with affordable housing efforts that you were funding, and I'm particularly grateful for all the senior housing because of all the people who are baby boomers like me and younger who are going to be flooding the senior housing that we have now. And I was so happy about the 2 projects on your agenda last time. This time, I want to thank you for 56 new units of affordable housing on your agenda tonight for people who are not baby boomers, primarily. I'm very happy about the Kalamazoo attainable housing. 8 additional houses. I've been watching those go up every year as you've approved more and more. And I love the look of the houses on Burr Oak and on North Rose and other places where those infill houses have been built. I love it that those are home ownership homes for people who could never afford to own a home with the prices that we have now for home ownership. I love it that they fit the neighborhoods. I think it's a really wonderful project, and it's great that it's just on your consent agenda tonight. And on the regular agenda, I'm very happy also about the 48 units that the LISC will be administering ARPA funds for housing to become voucher ready. I think it's brilliant that you're giving incentives to property owners, not just a few, but spread out over many, with 48 units, but only 3 to 5 units per property owner. That means there will be a wonderful spread of where those units will be rehabbed. This is 56 units of housing tonight without any greenfield being built up, without any natural areas being cut down, all infill or rehab. And I'm very, very pleased about that and your decisions to use the ARPA COVID recovery funds in the ways you have. In addition to the money also on your agenda for the community violence intervention, I want to say housing is a big piece of the community violence intervention. I think a lot of you know that with the stability of a
Thank you, Toby. Is there anyone else in the chambers? Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Annalise Bohl. I'm a graduate of Lloyd Norris High School, and I'm now studying biology and Spanish at Kalamazoo College in addition to running cross country there. I am here today to express my appreciation for the fantastic work that has been done in our downtown area, specifically in regards to the updated pedestrian crosswalks. These improvements have not only enhanced the safety and accessibility of our city, but also have significantly contributed to the overall appeal of downtown Kalamazoo. One crosswalk in particular has caught my attention and deserves special recognition: the pedestrian crosswalk on Academy Street, which connects Kalamazoo College and Western Michigan University to our downtown. The vital link not only facilitates the flow of students and residents, but also symbolizes the strong connection between our institutions of higher learning and our vibrant downtown community. The enhancements to the crosswalks and other throughout the downtown area have made traversing our city safer and more efficient for pedestrians. In addition to features such as improved signage, brighter crosswalks markings, and enhanced lighting have not only increased safety but have also beautified our urban landscapes. These upgrades ensure that students, residents, and visitors can traverse our city with confidence, enjoying the rich culture and amenities it has to offer. Moreover, I'd like to commend the city's commitment to traffic calming measures in downtown Kalamazoo. The efforts to reduce traffic speed, encourage more pedestrian-friendly spaces, and promote a sense of community has been nothing short of transformational. The calming effects of these measures extend far beyond the traffic control and are also making our downtown a much more pleasant and inviting place to be. In conclusion, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the City Commission and all those involved in making these improvements to our downtown pedestrian crosswalks and traffic calming measures. These changes we are witnessing are not only aesthetically pleasing, but also critical for the safety and well-being of our community. The enhanced connectivity, safety, and calming effects are turning our downtown into a more attractive and enjoyable place for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Bull, and I've been commuting downtown Kalamazoo by bicycle year-round for the past 15 years. I'm here to express my heartfelt appreciation for the remarkable strides our city has taken to enhance its micromobility infrastructure. It is truly heartening to witness the positive transformation of our community and the opportunities that now abound for its residents to embrace a non-motorized modes of transportation. Our city has always tried to be at the forefront of innovation and progress. And the recent developments in updated infrastructure are a testament to that tradition. With the advent of new bike lanes, pedestrian-friendly paths, and crosswalk signals, our communities have taken a significant leap forward in sustainability, accessibility, and improved quality of life. First and foremost, these enhancements in micromobility infrastructure have unlocked new avenues for reducing our carbon footprints as we continue to grapple with the challenges of climate change. Promoting non-motorized transportation options is a crucial step in mitigating the environmental impact of our daily commutes. By offering safe and convenient alternatives to cars, we are reducing emissions, alleviating traffic congestion, and working towards a greener, cleaner future for our city. Equally important is the issue of accessibility. The new micromobility infrastructure has made our city more inclusive by providing accessible paths for individuals with disabilities, by creating spaces that are easily navigable for everyone. We are sending a clear message that our community values diversity and strives to be a place where everyone can participate fully in public life. In closing, I would like to applaud the City Commission for its foresight in investing in this vital aspect of urban development. Our city is becoming a shining example of how effective non-motorized infrastructure can improve the lives of its residents in countless ways. We have made strides in promoting sustainability, health, inclusivity, and community spirit, and we should continue to invest in expand these efforts. Let us continue to work together to build a city that is not only vibrant and forward-thinking, but also one that prioritizes the well-being of its people. By doing so,
Thank you so much. Yes, please.
Yes, my name is Ray Lopes. I'm a Kalamazoo McDonald's supervisor, and I just come forth to you guys to talk about the police involvement with us. Like, I run North Street right here at Rose, and the response times from them is very lack. Like, I had my general manager get assaulted by a homeless person, you know, and it took them 45 minutes to arrive. Now, if something would have happened, like really happened, if my manager put his hands on him, we would be the ones at fault. So I just want to come and say, like, we need to look into this a little bit more in detail, having them try to arrive a little more responsible, like more response time. Like, I have Stadium. I just had a robbery 2 weeks ago. I took everything to the detective, footage, everything they asked for. I have not received nothing about it. Not in them interviewing suspects, that I gave them suspects' names, addresses. I have received nothing. So I just come to you guys to just ask, like, we need to look into our police and just see if we can do something about it, because at this point, my owner's looking at shutting down North Street. And we don't want to do that. We want to be here for the community as well, but we can't be like that if we can't get no help as well. So I just ask if you guys can look into that for me, please. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Matt Milzarek, City Resident. Appreciate your time tonight. Some items on your consent agenda involving my employment, Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services. Just wanted to preemptively thank you, if this does pass, for your support. This partnership with the city has been a vital part of our organization and a huge success getting folks into families. These funds won't just get 8 families into a new home, but it'll also target these neighborhoods and uplift the surrounding communities and also reduce our carbon footprint, as these are highly energy efficient homes. So I just really wanted to thank you and point out this is part of a bigger vision, which you guys also fund those bigger visions as well. So I just really appreciate the support and the partnership and the great team of folks behind me here on city staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zarek. And thank you for signing in. So Commissioner Hess has been trying to remind me that to ask people who come to the podium and speak to sign in. You are not required to do that, but at least that way we know exactly your name and the spelling of it and how to get in touch with you if you want someone to follow up. Is there anyone else in the chambers who want to take advantage of this opportunity? See no one. Andy, it's over to you. Do we have anybody who's called in with a public comment?
Let's find out. One moment. Thank you for calling. You have 3 minutes for your comments. Please go ahead.
Hello?
Hello, yes.
Hello?
Please go ahead with your comments.
3 minutes for your comments. Please go ahead. Thank you. This is Stacy Salters Jackson. Hello? Please go ahead with your comments.
You may want to pause your YouTube streaming.
This is Stacy Salters Jackson. And I am just calling this evening in support of the teacher who stood up and shared their information on the gun violence efforts in the community. And I'm just hoping that the city can be as intentional as they have been around the bike lanes and micro-traffic, and so that there's some equity in that, right? Because the people who are expressing the harm are from a demographic, right? Is representing a demographic, and the micro-traffic is also being expressed by a demographic primarily. So let's do better, right? Let's put our money where our mouth is, and let's impact this community in a way that we know we can. Thank you, and I apologize for the audio issues. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you for calling. You have 3 minutes for your comments. Please go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I hope everyone had a fantastic Labor Day yesterday. As you may be aware, the big three auto workers are gearing up for the labor fight of a lifetime as they approach their contract expiration date on September 14th. The big three, composed of Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, have made $250 billion in profits in the last 10 years and over $20 billion in profits in 2023 alone. Meanwhile, workers' hourly pay has stalled while mandatory overtime has ratcheted up, tearing workers away from their families. I'm sure you will all agree that record profits should equal a record contract. The UAW members' demands are simple. Among them, workers want to eliminate tiers, they want a pay rise, and they want to spend more time with their families. These are demands that the big three can afford but refuse to do. The big three are expecting workers to settle for another contract full of concessions that will leave workers in the long run worse off. They are still refusing to engage in good faith negotiations. A victory for auto workers in this fight will lift and inspire all workers and believe that they can fight for more. The wins at Starbucks, Amazon, and UPS have shown the power of a good example. The strikes and labor organizing activities throughout the country indicate that it is a hot labor summer, and it's only getting hotter, with recent polling showing that 67% of Americans support unions. Why? Because when labor wins, families win, we all win. I ask you all today to voice your public support for UAW workers and their demands ahead of the September 14th deadline. Your solidarity will send a powerful message statewide that Kalamazoo supports workers willing to fight for a better deal. I ask you to voice your support when you have the opportunity to do so during Commissioner's comments. If UAW workers are forced to strike and remain on strike by the next City Commission meeting on September 18th, I ask that the Commission pass a resolution in support of the striking workers and their demands. As a city in Michigan, with its own proud auto manufacturing history, it is important we show solidarity with those fighting for a better world where everyone can prosper. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And it appears we have no further comments at this time.
Thank you for taking care of that. I appreciate it. I want to thank everybody that took the time and made the effort to provide public comments for the City Commission here at our business meeting this evening. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda. Manager Ritzma.
Thank you, Mayor. The following items are presented for approval. First, the approval of a contract supplemental change order with R.K. Davis Construction Incorporated for various construction modifications to wastewater tertiary disc filtration process facility in the amount of $176,549.40. Next, the approval of a contract with Plant Moran for enterprise resource planning, financial software consulting services in the amount of $309,875. Next, the approval of the amendments to the fiscal year 2023 budget to incorporate parking system revenues and expenses into the city budget. Next is the approval of a grant in the amount of $770,000 to Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services from the city's coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery, ARPA funds, to construct 8 new single-family homes for low-income households. Next is the approval of the allocation of $450,000 of the remaining $1 million of community violence prevention ARPA state and local fiscal relief funds to the United Way of South Central Michigan for grants to nonprofit organizations for eligible activities in direct response to the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic. Next is the acceptance of a distribution from the Mayor's Riverfront Endowment Fund for the operational support for the 2023 in the amount of $109,532.20. Next is the first consideration of an off-premises sign agreement with Adams Outdoor Advertising to allow for the removal of a billboard in the North Side neighborhood and the reconstruction of a billboard along I-94 and set a public hearing for October 2, 2023. Next is the approval of mayor's appointments of Pamela Burby to the Civil Rights Board for a term expiring on March 31, 2024. And finally, approval and acceptance of an easement agreement with Orley Properties LLC for the continued installation and operation of water pressure reducing station 43.
Thank you very much, Manager Ritzma. Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to approve items 1 through 9 and authorize the city manager to sign all related documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Commissioner Hoffman, supported by Commissioner Pradel. Clerk Barling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The items on the consent agenda are approved. Manager Ritzma.
Item H1 under regular agenda, approval of a grant in the amount of $1,500,000 to the Local Initiative Support Corporation from the city's Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery, ARPA funds, to rehabilitate approximately 48 rental units and increase the number of Housing Choice Voucher ready units for low-income households.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. I don't suppose you do have a staff presentation on this item?
No,
is that
but
right?
we have Sherilyn Parsons here to answer any questions.
Okay, so this is on our agenda before. We did have some discussion about it. I think there were some other questions that got answered in the meantime. Commissioners, do you have anyone here on the dais have questions that you would like to have answered? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, Commissioner Hess. Ms. Parsons, thank you for being here with us.
Hey, Sherilyn, thank you. I did notice in some of the paperwork that there were a series of forms that were going to be coming back to you. And I was just wondering if it's possible to share the forms as they are populated so that we can know also what's going on.
Oh, sure. All of the additional attachments that you're referring to that were in agreement, absolutely.
Thank you. Other questions? Commissioner Pradel.
Hey, Sherilyn, thanks for being here tonight. Just wanted to ask, I know one of the challenges, I guess, when you are dealing with ARPA funds as they kind of trickle down to other people who are executing as the subrecipients. That's why we have the I-parametrics or whatever that helps us with those different agreements and contracts or whatever. I was just kind of curious if you could share, I see Zach's here as well, just about how we're going to be able to, especially a lot of those landlords that are going to be executing this work with those compliance details, whether it be insurance or, documentation that's required for federal funds.
Sure. So thank you for pointing out. I did invite the executive director of our local LISC here, Zach Bauer. So I would like him to come up as well in case there's anything additional he would like to add to this. But in answer for my pieces of what you just asked, so we have been, LISC and the city have been talking about this particular pilot program with these dollars and how to run it similarly to the way that a HUD rental program is without the HUD overlays, and to try to pilot it to welcome a group of landlords that traditionally don't work with vouchers or low-income tenants, to bring them to the table in an effort to one, get more units that are housing choice voucher ready, and to two, also hopefully break some of the stigma that is around federal programs or low-income programs. And so the compliance period will be in conjunction with LISC, who is the subrecipient of these dollars. I will let Zach speak to what he's working with the county, because that's a really cool development that's been happening with this. And then there is staff at the local level, lending staff. So LISC is a community development financial institution, so they do have a little bit of advantage over some of our just traditional on-the-ground grassroots nonprofit, because they have the ability to work with underwriters and with lending and with the complications of lending and compliance, those two pieces going together. So Maybe I answered your questions in full and maybe not. So if there's additional things I didn't answer.
Yeah, I guess maybe just like the supports in place to specifically help the landlords through those issues, because especially there'll be a decent pool of those landlords doing the work, which is great because it diversifies where it's not just one centralized person. And as you said, it's great because it's introducing the landlords to potential tenants that ordinarily they wouldn't be serving. And so just curious how we can support them to make sure that we make it as barrier-free as possible to get them involved in doing this work.
Would you want to speak or do you want me to?
Yeah, I got you up here. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Bauer. Nice to have you here.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Manager. So in partnership with Sherilyn and the county, we've been trying to wrestle the certification process for affordable housing developers. And as Commissioner Pradel has rightfully pointed out, we put a lot of resources out into the community to support the development of multifamily housing, and we want to ensure that those public dollars are being well stewarded. And so as a result of that, we have made a grant, LISC National, to Kalamazoo County government to help them develop and deploy a registry website for developers who receive benefits from both the county and the city. And so annually they will have to go in and recertify those units that they've received benefits for or the developments themselves. And so this is very early stages. We just allocated this grant funding to the county. And so I know that it's probably going to be a little ugly for a little while, the website, so don't expect something attractive. But at least it's a step towards ensuring that those individuals who are receiving public benefits are returning on their investments in the community.
Yes. And the neat thing with this is it is going to be housed locally. And so the office of LISC is in downtown Kalamazoo. So there will be a program officer who's dedicated to this particular program and can answer, assist, and work with all of the landlords that are going to receive and give through this agreement.
And one of the goals to decentralize, if I'm not mistaken, if I read correctly, is each landlord would be allocated enough funding for about 3 to 5 properties, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we did cap the amount so that it wouldn't become more burdensome than what a landlord might think it would be. So we just navigated that barrier or concern by capping the amount.
It's nice as well. So if for some reason one landlord was more challenging or wasn't working well, that there's a diversified pool to work with. So, okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Other questions, Commissioners? Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a question, but I just wanted to make a comment that I'm excited about this. This is awesome. When Director Mitchell was talking about all of the projects that he had in his back pocket, and we're starting to realize all of those and to see all those kind of come forward. Zach, you guys have done some great work on this. As I'm, looking through this, I think together, the team, it's the team and who we're working with. 48 housing units that are going to be rehabilitated for housing choice vouchers. Love that we have the aspects of putting a lien and recording it. I love that because now we know what's going to happen and we know what's going to get done. And I want to say thank you to all of the landlords that I know are out there that are just itching to take advantage of $25,000 per unit, correct? Up to 3 to 5. I mean, think about what that's going to do. When you talk about lifting up someone's standard of living, especially where they're at right now. Some landlords can afford to do it, they don't. Some landlords can't afford to do it, so they can't. So I think this is definitely a great avenue. And you talk about taking the housing choice vouchers, if our houseless receive them and, they need them, or people that are just living with family members, they're looking to get their own place that have kids, working with individuals that could be from like a domestic abuse situation that need to go somewhere. You think about opening up 48 more units for our community, that's awesome. So I didn't have a question, I just had a little, yay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you.
to both of you so much. You know, we've been hearing a lot about home ownership opportunities, but what we also recognize is not every family or individual want to be a homeowner, and some will never attain that because of whatever reason. So to have these units and this funding to go towards quality, permanent rental housing is critical. I remember a couple of weeks ago, Sherilyn, you talked about the housing ecosystem, how we have to do both. And so I see that this is part of that both, because we're not focused just on affordable home ownership opportunities. We're also looking at some of the most marginalized individuals having the opportunity to live in quality, affordable housing with a vouchers. So I am excited about this as well. And I also feel like will be an opportunity for us to build relationships with property owners and landlords around the housing equity ordinance and the source of income that we have already approved. So this is good work, and I'm super excited. And I'm excited for people who will be renting and have quality, affordable housing.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Commissioner Hess?
Absolutely. I agree with you. I'm just wondering, you know, you heard the report on the ALICE statistics this evening, and I'm wondering if you feel this program will be able to make a dent in any of that.
Yes, it will, as long as that dent's not defined as, you know, in millimeters or centimeters or inches. Yeah, there will be a dent. I think every effort that we take, as Commissioner Hoffman just mentioned, within the entire ecosystem, it moves the markets in such a way that we are not just creating the units, but we are also kind of hammering whatever it is we're putting a dent in on multiple sides and in multiple arenas. And that's what's going to get us actually seeing some movement and momentum within all of these strategies and opportunities.
Yeah, I see it as a win-win, a yes and appreciate you guys working together toward this.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Any more questions from Commission at this time? Thank you, Mr. Bauer. Thank you, Ms. Parsons. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Now is the opportunity for anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this item. It is item H1 on the regular agenda. If you want to comment, please keep your comments relative to this particular item. And you'll have an opportunity to sign in again if you so choose. Hi.
You know I'm already excited about this agenda item. And I want to agree with what Commissioner Stephanie Hoffman said about the housing equity ordinance. This is a really good opportunity at the same time that you're offering the $25,000 per unit to property owners, to remind all the property owners within the city that in the city, source of income discrimination is illegal. That means the housing equity ordinance that you all passed unanimously in 2020 says property owners may not have blanket rejection of everyone who holds a housing voucher or receives money from a religious congregation to help with rent, for example. It seems to me that those two things go hand in hand, and I hope that LISC will be reminding property owners of that fact that source of income discrimination is illegal in the city. It's still happening. So we need to keep talking about it, reminding landlords, reminding renters that it's wrong. It doesn't mean landlords have to accept everyone who has a voucher, but they cannot reject all voucher holders. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello again, still Matt Mozark, city resident. I just wanted to speak in favor of this. LISC has been an amazing community partner and a lot of work that we do in the community, and 48 units is a great number. So very excited, support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mazzarek. Anyone else in the chambers that would like to speak on this item? Seeing no one, Commissioners, the recommended action is a motion to approve the grant agreement. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Commissioner Hess made the motion, supported by Commissioner Hoffman. Any further discussion? Commissioners, Commissioner Pradel.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to, again, applaud city staff and our partners that we're working with on all the housing work we're doing. You know, we met in two now forums with city commissioners where we were in retreats, where we were talking about our priorities. We had a biennial survey. We asked the community through a survey through what they wanted us to spend our ARPA funding, and overwhelmingly the community told us the top 5 priority was housing. Already $5.5 million of ARPA funding, which is a pretty significant chunk of change that we've devoted. If you want to know where somebody's values lie, watch where they put their money in their budget. Just in the last month alone, you look at their last meeting, we devoted funding to 134 units of housing. Tonight you see that we're devoting to 56 units, so almost in just 1 month's time, supporting housing for 200, almost 200 families in our community. Something that really stood out with me, Commissioner Hoffman, that I appreciated that you mentioned that I did not think about, but is a really great point. It's about that relationship with the landlords and how integral that is to creating a strong, dynamic housing ecosystem. So thank you for reminding everyone of that. But I also wanted to just make a note about this as well, is that I think one of the challenges with ARPA-funded type initiatives is we're 28 months away from a cliff, right? So we're 28 months away from when ARPA funding has to be spent or it eviscerates. We don't have it. And so it's just so we're thoughtful about the timing, you know, when you think about trying to work with 48 property owners who are landlords in our community, 28 months goes by real fast. And so just as we're thoughtful about that time ticking, that is going to be here before we know it. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Any other items of discussion? Seeing no one, Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The item is approved. Next are reports and legislation. City Manager Ritzman, do you have a report?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Tonight, I just want to recognize some folks for their great service to the city. I had the opportunity to do a police ride-along on last Friday with our public safety officers, and just to see what they encounter day in, day out, and the professionalism of each and every one of them. This summer has been rather challenging, as you can expect, especially with staffing shortages. So we respond up to 400 calls for service in a day. You can do the math and just know that they're out there responding to many calls. And our officers, these officers that have recognized that and have stood up and decided to fill in overtime, sacrificing time away from their families and doing it without complaint to carry on the mission of public safety, which is to keep Kalamazoo safe. I would like to formally recognize the dedication of the following public safety officers and sergeants who covered many of the shift shortages. PSOs John Manny, Gabriella Avila, Kip Krieger, Quinn DeBolt, Travis Cutler, Michael Arnett, and Peter Arnett, and Sergeants Nate Beelan, Jeff Townsend, Jerry Libretto, and Brett Bilesma. So again, these folks have stepped up and again sacrificed quite a bit to fill in where needed, and really appreciate that and the service they provide. Also, this past weekend, it was a warm and busy Labor Day weekend. Officers from our A and C platoons seized 15 guns off the street, 3 of which were capable of fully automatic fire. And addressing gun violence continues to be public safety's top priority. Year to date, public safety has seized 312 firearms off the street. And I would like to thank the officers for their dedication, again, to keep Kalamazoo safe. So, in response to the staff shortages, we are in the process of hiring public safety officers. So there is a current hiring process open, which closes this Friday, September 8th. Go to kdps.org or refer people to kds.org to apply, and hopefully we'll get a lot of applicants that can start filling these slots that are open. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Manager Ritzma. We have the opportunity for commissioner comments. Just as a reminder for everybody who's watching or here in the chambers is that we do have a closed session after commissioner comments. So we'll be going into our closed session. Sometimes we adjourn our meeting before we go into closed session because we aren't intending to come back. But will we be coming back this evening after our closed session?
I'm looking at HR Director Shelley Dusick, and she indicates yes, we will be back on the dais.
So this evening, after our closed session, we will come back here to take our action in public. Just as a reminder, once again, for anyone who's paying attention, is we actually don't vote in a closed session. All the actions that we take have to be taken in a public setting. So that's why we'll be coming back out of our closed session. So now is the opportunity, before we leave for that, for commissioner comments. Is there anyone who'd like to start that this evening? Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to address the young woman that spoke, really the community. I don't know if she wrote her name down, regarding, the gun violence that is happening in our city and everywhere. Right now, we have allocated a lot of funds to trying to stop this. I don't think if Commissioner Juarez was here, he would say the same thing, is we can't do it alone. We have to have the community. When you talk about how many guns that were taken off of the street and just reading all of the information that KDPS put out on how they found these and got them off the streets. They're out there risking their lives every day. And, I commend them for that. I thank you. And it is something that we are actively working on. I don't think anyone that sits up here wants to see someone die or get shot at or see a mother bury their child or a sister or a daughter or a mom or a dad. So it's not something that we take lightly. I do want to address something, and this is something that I will do better at, is being more vocal, I guess. I think it would be more vocal and more supportive and more around to our community that is out there hurting. Sometimes when we get these texts, they're texted 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, kind of letting us know what's going on. And I make the pledge to make sure that when someone is hurt, that I will be out there if I can. So that is my pledge to my community.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Decker. Anyone else? Commissioner Pradel?
Thank you, Mr.
We're
Mayor.
going to have a politeness competition here. No, you.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to make a couple notes. So one of the notes I wanted to make is I had a chance to be a part of a presentation or a forum today at Town Hall, and our public services team was there presenting. And one of the things they had mentioned or notated is the successes they're seeing in terms of reductions in crashes and injuries related to traffic calming. And one that particularly just stood out to me, Director Baker, he texted this to me before one of the CATS meetings that I was part of recently, and he mentioned just the intersection of Stadium, since those improvements have been made on Stadium and Howard with sidewalks and the tree island in the middle, that there had been a reduction of, I believe it was, 25% reduction in crashes and 40% reduction in injuries just at that intersection in the last year. We're mentioning today that just preliminarily, just looking at previous August numbers, that it looks like the downtown stretch in the recent time has reduced crashes by 33%. So that's significant, and I'm proud of the team for continuing to look at ways to do that and continue to listen to community to do that work. Also wanted to make sure to notate, if you didn't get a chance to view earlier tonight, our committee of the whole meeting, we had Director Mitchell talk to us about our cannabis chamber request for proposals that's going to be going out soon. So really great work in that regard, and I think one of the things that Director Mitchell said is that we are really leading on this front, and I'm proud of any time that we hear that Kalamazoo is leading instead of following someone. Also wanted to mention Jennifer, who was here and spoke as a former educator, and the impact of gun violence in our community. I couldn't agree more, and I appreciate her taking an opportunity to come forward and speak up about that. I echo Commissioner Decker's sentiments that you can't begin to convey how heavy of a feeling it is to hear that a young person, or any person for that matter, has been harmed or killed in our community. And some of the recent individuals, I mean, we're talking like birthdays from 2009. I mean, just mind-boggling, right? I mean, somebody born in 2009 injured with a gun. Just wanted to make sure to also mention as well, some things that make me very hopeful in this work is our Blueprint for Peace and the work that Jennifer Haymoss and Kalamazoo Community Foundation is doing. But also tonight, it was in our consent agenda, and maybe we should have pulled it for the regular agenda, but allocating $500,000+ for this work, a continuation of work that we're doing in tandem with Kalamazoo County, and I'm really proud of that work. Wanted to make an ask to the commission here because, obviously it's Open Meetings Act here, but I've been talking to Commissioner Jen Strebs over at Kalamazoo County. This is something that we did before, but I'm asking if we could potentially do this again about a resolution related to members of our immigrant community. So since 2008, members of the immigrant community have been unable to get driver's licenses. Major impetus barrier to our immigrant community. We passed a resolution not that long ago as a commission, but it is an issue that's in conversation in the state. It would make a big deal if we could do that again to really, nudge and advocate to our elected leaders at the state level that we feel that this would be important to our community and our state. For those of you that think this is some radical idea, there's already 16 states plus Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico that already have laws in place that allow it. And it's a huge barrier to everything from labor, but also just vulnerabilities of getting pulled over or trying to hide your life. And so anyways, I would love to be able to bring that forward here in one of the coming meetings to pass that again with some teeth and bring that forward. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel.
I'll go. You should go last, Vice Mayor. I'd like to give a shout out to our ambassador program through the Parks and Rec Department, who patrol downtown and keep it, our ambassadors for the folks downtown, keep it picked up and so on. A young man, Bailey, I'd like to give a shout out to Bailey for being there on an evening shift and making things nice for all the people that are visiting downtown. I want to give gratitude to all who helped out or all who attended the 60th anniversary of the I Have a Dream speech at Martin Luther King Park last Monday, especially our Parks and Rec Department, our Department of Communications, our DEI Department, and our Department of Public Safety. We need to continue the work of the dream in this city. And also the speakers, Dr. Darren Slade was amazing. AC, Assistant Chief Victor Green, gave an amazing message. NAACP President Wendy Fields, Kalamazoo Junior Girls founder Pam Rowland, soloist Rhea Olavache sang the national anthem with amazing grace. And our own Mayor Anderson also spoke there. So let us continue those courageous conversations in this town as we continue to make the dream a reality. And then lastly, you may or may not know me as a parrot head. I am an unabashed Jimmy Buffett fan. He is more than Margaritaville. He is very deep. He's an amazing artist, poet, businessman who passed on Saturday morning. He left a legacy of creativity, of fun, of joy, of influence, and a Caribbean soul on all who ever heard his poetic music. So his lines, some of the lines that are etched on my heart here in Kalamazoo as I serve: if we couldn't laugh, we would all go insane. just one more candle and a trip around the sun. If there's one thing left that I've learned from all this living, it's that I wouldn't change a thing if I let go. And then he also wrote, breathe in, breathe out, move on. I encourage all of you to kind of look him up or maybe listen to a tune or two that he's written. They are very meaningful words that inspire me as I do this work. But in 1982, as Jim and I moved here to Kalamazoo from Ann Arbor, there was never a song more true than I Have Found Me a Home. We quickly found Kalamazoo to be the home that we knew we were seeking. We dove into our community, we raised our family here, and it's a loving and wonderful place with a funny name. Our son chose I Have Found Me a Home to dance with me at his wedding. So today, these lyrics resonate for me and throughout the years from I Have Found Me a Home, especially as we talk about our streets. The days drift by. They don't have names. None of the streets here look the same. There's so many quiet places, smiling eyes to match the smiling faces. And I have found me a home. I have found me a home. You can have the rest of everything I own, because I have found me a home. Thank you, Kalamazoo, for being my home, my family's home, for these 41 years. And for all the other 74,900 of us. That's what I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Vice Mayor Cooney.
Thank you. That was great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Alice thing. And I want to start out by a quote from Martin Luther King, where he said, "None of us are free until all of us are free." And why I'm saying that is because this isn't just about the people that are low income and hurting. It's about me. It's about us. None of us up here wants to live in a community where there is such poverty and people in struggle. It's just wrong, and we don't want that. So there's a new book called Poverty by America by Matthew Desmond. He also wrote a book called Evicted on housing. And in that book he says, poverty in America is a choice. We have the resources that we have to end poverty in this country, but the country chooses not to use those resources. I believe that we live in an economic system which increases inequality every day, which destroys our environment, and which dramatically widens the racial divide in this country consistently. It's built into the system. That's the system we're in. We didn't create that system, but we're in that system. But we have to do our part. And it seems to me that what we have to continually do is listen to the people who are in struggle because they are the experts in their own lives. And secondly, continue to look at best practices around the country, because there are cities around the country that are doing things about this. And I don't think we can be complacent. I don't think we can say we're doing a lot. We are doing a lot. Now this is enough. No, it's not enough. We have to do more. And we have to really work on those issues. Secondly, I want to lend my solidarity to the UAW workers. It was the UAW workers that revolutionized labor rights with their sit-ins in the 1930s and set a pattern which changed the whole picture for workers' rights. And the UAW has been forced to make really tough concessions with a two-tier wage structure and with the loss of so much in retirement. It's time for workers to share in the prosperity that those automobile companies are enjoying.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Cooney. Commissioner Hoffman?
Thank you, Dr. Cooney, for that. Like, I echo everything you said. A couple of things that, like, Alyssa lifted up. Like, this is not relegated to people. This is about systems. And she said systems, but what the word she did not use, it's about systematic racism. That's what it is. It's a hard word, but that is the truth. And so us as a city, if we do not make an intentional commitment to addressing social mobility, the inequities that racism has prevented or created these barriers for people of color, once the ARPA dollars are gone, we keep hearing they're going to be gone. So what are we willing to do? How are we willing to invest in this population of people who are being represented right here? One thing that we can do, and one thing that I love, is that, you know, we've already passed the housing equity ordinance where we have source of income protection now. The city of Detroit passed a resolution in support of a proposal that would ban source of income at the state level. I would love to see us as a commission do a resolution in support of source of income discrimination, and also be able to send that to the state level. What I know is that Kalamazoo has been the first for so many beautiful, hard things that people didn't believe in, and yet it happened, and it continues to happen. We have the Kalamazoo Promise. We had the first millage for school-aged children that were in homeless or housing insecurity. We did that in 2015. We now have the Homes for All millage, where we expanded that to include all. We've always been a city who did first. And so I am not scared to take a step out and say, you know what, we've done it in this area, we need to do it here. We have to make an intentional commitment to affect these numbers when it comes to Black and brown folks, regardless if we have ARPA or not. We need to find the money. We need to make it a commitment. We already said that we wanted to become an anti-racist institution. This is part of that. And so I just want us to continue to look at this. This is not people. This is systematic racism. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Thank you. Manager Ritzma.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to James Baker and our public services tree crews. Was it 2 weeks ago now? We had the severe weather. We were fortunately spared here in Kalamazoo, but Grand Rapids area got hit hard. We were able to send 2 crews on that Saturday up to Grand Rapids to help them out. So I know they publicly acknowledged that on their website or Facebook page, thanking us. So, but I want to thank our crews and James Baker for stepping up in very short order to help another community out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Director Baker. Appreciate that. Thank your team, and thank you, Manager Ritzma. Just a couple comments here. Like I've said before, often many things are said before it gets to me, so I don't have to repeat any of that. But as it relates to gun violence, was specific, very specifically noted in comments. It is not always an easy thing to determine, and I appreciate your commitment, Commissioner Decker, what the best response is here on the dais. And I know a lot of us respond in a variety of ways, and some of them are less public, and sometimes that's what's needed in any given situation. Sometimes it's just reaching out to people we know that are affected. And so I know that work does happen. And certainly it is an issue that was ranked as a #1 issue of concern by the City Commission. How does that get represented? Those commission values, you see budget investments being made. And I can tell you that right from the beginning of any one of these events, shooting, a young person passing away, when all of us get notified, sometimes in the middle of the night, that is a sick, sick feeling. And, you know, we each somehow have to respond to our individual grief for the community. And I know obviously it is not as close for some of us as a family member for sure. But also to remember that we had a list of public safety officers here that are working overtime, and sometimes in a given shift, literally, we have a group of individuals here who are part of our team who respond immediately and do all that they can and to help save somebody's life or protect somebody, and then still have to go on and finish that work shift and perhaps even experience that again. So I think we have a team here that is on the front lines of that, but also, you know, is part of that general community experience of trauma. So we'll just keep trying to grapple with that and determine what the best response can possibly be. But I know that this commission leads with this heart. So finally, on our agenda, we have a closed session, but we can't just go into closed session without a motion. So the recommended action is a motion to go into closed session to discuss labor negotiations. Is there a motion? Motion made by Commissioner Hoffman.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Hess. We will be coming back into open session following the closed session. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Pradel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Decker?
Yes.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion passes. So we are, there we go. Thank you, Scott. We are now reconvening, coming back after our closed section, and we actually have a proposed action. I think there's a motion related to that. Attorney Leal, would you mind reading it?
The following is put before the City Commission for action. It is a motion to approve the 5-year collective bargaining agreement with AFS CME along the lines as discussed in closed session.
Thank you. Is there anyone who's willing to make that motion?
Moved?
So moved.
Support.
So moved.
Did you move?
Motion made by Commissioner Decker, supported by Commissioner Hess. Any discussion, Commission? Commissioner Decker.
Would just like to say great job to Ms. Dusick and Mr. Vicenzi. Thank you, guys.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yeah, just wanted to echo thanks again to Shelley and Steve for their work on this, but also wanted to, make sure we share our thanks to the 150 men and women who work their tails off every day on behalf of the residents of the city of Kalamazoo who are part of the ASME collective bargaining unit. We thank you for your work and service. We saw $111 million of capital improvements this year. We know that's ambitious work, and a lot of that work is being done by these hardworking men and women. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Clerk Browning, please call the roll.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion passes. And I love you, Kalamazoo. We are adjourned.